Here are a bunch of magic cards that are going to make your Commander games way more fun. Hey everyone, my name is DJ. This is the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel, and are you heading out to a Magic convention or even your local game store? Well, you should take a look at your Commander decks and find out if they are built and tuned to create the most fun experience. I'm going to give you a few tips today to make sure that your decks are exciting for everyone at the Commander table. First off, a little disclaimer, everyone has fun in a different way. These are 5 different ways that I have fun, and I do see other people around me having fun as well, but you could have a playgroup that has really a ton of fun by being as cutthroat and competitive as possible, and that's fantastic. So take all of this advice with a little grain of salt and your own playgroup in mind. The first way to have a ton of fun is by accelerating the game. You know, stacks and taxation effects are usually seen as salty. A lot of people generally don't like those style of cards. And so if you give and bring the exact opposite, then it's going to create a lot of excitement and really fast-paced games. Let's take a look at Overabundance. 1 red-green for an enchantment. Whenever a player taps a land for mana, that player adds 1 mana of any type that land produced, and Overabundance deals 1 damage to that player. Also, Descent into Avernus. 2 and a red for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, put 2 Descent counters on Descent into Avernus. Then each player creates X treasure tokens, and Descent into Avernus deals X damage to each player, where X is the number of Descent counters on Descent into Avernus. And finally, Glunch the Bestower. 1 green-white for a 0/5 creature jellyfish. At the beginning of your end step, choose a player. They put 2 +1/+1 counters on a creature they control, choose a second player to draw a card, then choose a third player to create 2 treasure tokens. You know, the worst Magic games are when you do nothing, and these cards are going to assure that you're going to do something because you're going to have the resources, the mana and cards, to be able to do what you need to do. You're just going to have to do it quickly because this game's going to be over with all of the pressure that's going on. It should be a crazy fun game. My next piece of advice is to get the table involved. Get everyone talking. Play the type of cards that need people to talk and make decisions. You know, Commander's a social game, and the social aspect is one of the most fun parts about it. I have a few favorite card draw effects that always start a conversation. Fact or Fiction. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put 1 pile in your hand, the other in your graveyard. Guided Passage. Green, blue, red for sorcery. Reveal your whole library. And then an opponent chooses from among them a creature card, a land card, and a non-creature, non-land card, and you put them into your hand, then shuffle. Or we have Hostile Negotiations. 3 and a black for an instant. Exile the top 3 cards of your library in a face-down pile. Then exile the top 3 cards of your library in another face-down pile. Look at the cards in each pile, then turn a pile of your choice face up. An opponent chooses one of those piles, put all of the cards chosen into your hand, and the rest into your graveyard. You lose 3 life. All of these are simple card draw spells, but they all require your opponents to kind of pick and choose. It creates a lot of interesting conversations to find out which resources I'm getting. Then of course there's cards that make us work together, like Council's Judgment. 1 white for sorcery with Will of the Council. Starting with you, each player votes for a non-land permanent you don't control. Exile each permanent with the most votes or tied for the most votes. So you're talking about what to target, what to kill. There's also Wheel of Misfortune, where everyone has to bid amount of life in order to get the wheel effect. Really good for pressuring life totals. And speaking of pressuring life totals, Prisoner's Dilemma is a new card out of Murders at Karlov Manor that I've talked about in previous videos and absolutely love. And this sets up the opportunity for players to play along and only take 4 damage. But if someone betrays them, then the betrayer takes 0, and the people that are betrayed get 12 damage. The flashback on this is amazing too. I love to create opportunities for backstabbing. The next thing that can be incredibly fun is creating alliances between players, or feuds. Wedding Ring reads 2 white for an artifact. When Wedding Ring enters the battlefield, if it was cast, target opponent creates a token that's a copy of it. Whenever an opponent who controls an artifact named Wedding Ring draws a card during their turn, you draw a card. Whenever an opponent who controls an artifact named Wedding Ring gains life during their turn, you gain that much life. You're connecting 2 players, so they can be allies. Similarly, we have Tenuous Truce, 1 and a white for an enchantment aura, enchant opponent. At the beginning of enchanted opponent's end step, you and that player each draw a card. When you attack enchanted opponent or a planeswalker they control, or when they attack you or planeswalker you control, sacrifice Tenuous Truth. So you've got to get along to get the benefit. You can also play cards like the Technique Cycle. This has Demonstrate. When you cast a spell, you can copy it. And if you do, you choose an opponent to also copy it. Players may choose new targets for the copies. So if you give away a copy of your spell, you get two, giving them something in return. Or there's the Offering Cycle, which has a really good effect, but then gives some effect to an opponent. Sylvan Offering, for example, is X and a green. Choose an opponent, you and that player each create X green Treefolk creature token. Choose an opponent, you and that player each create X 1/1 green Elf Warrior creature tokens. There's also the Hunted Cycle that gives things away. There's a ton of different political effects that we can navigate. And giving away stuff seems bad in Commander, but actually it's quite good, because if you can create a deal, if you can give something away and know for certain that it's not aimed at you, then it just creates a larger advantage against the other players, probably the players that you should be concerned about and that are in the lead. It creates a big balancing effect when you're playing multiplayer. Similarly, you can create feuds at the table. I'm talking about Bitter Feud. 4 and a red for an enchantment. As Bitter Feud enters the battlefield, choose 2 players. If a source controlled by one of the chosen players would deal damage to the other chosen player or a permanent that player controls, that source deals double that damage to that player or permanent instead. Now, Bitter Feud could just create an alliance between 2 opponents. That's interesting. But how about Sower of Discord? 4 black for a 6/6 demon with flying. As Sower of Discord enters the battlefield, choose 2 players. Whenever damage is dealt to one of the chosen players, the other chosen player also loses that much life. Oh man. This has me thinking of other effects that do this, like Crown of Doom, or any card that facilitates attacking other opponents, giving them advantage. Some of these effects also help accelerate the game, and that's something that we've already talked about being an exciting mechanic for multiplayer. Look, whenever you're creating opportunities for people to get involved, for people to fight against each other or ally up, you're again getting the table talking, getting the table excited and thinking about those politics, thinking about those interactions, and that's a fun experience for a lot of different players. Just come together or fight with each other. Next, let's talk about randomness. Let's create opportunities for luck to have a big impact on the game. You know, there's that suspense in the random effect. I mean, think about, when you're playing Texas Hold'em and the river card comes up. That's an exciting moment that can have a big payoff or a big letdown, but everyone gets really hyped about it. Same thing with in Dungeons and Dragons, you're going to roll that dice. You're hoping for that nat 20. Create those experiences in your own commander deck. You can play straightforward cards and they might be more reliable, but randomness can create big moments and big fun. Mirror March is 5 and a red for an enchantment. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, flip a coin until you lose a flip. For each flip you won, create a token that's a copy of that creature. Those tokens gain haste, exile them at the beginning of the next end step. Or Delina Wild Mage, 3 and a red for a 3/2 Elf Shaman. Whenever Delina Wild Mage attacks, choose target creature you control, then roll a d20. 1 through 14, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of that creature, except it's not legendary and it has, at the end of combat, exile this creature. But between a 15 and a 20, create one of those tokens and you can roll again. With the right number of flips or rolls, you can create just insane game-winning situations. You can even have your good removal, contain a little bit of randomness. Chaos Warp is a staple in red. It gets rid of anything, but then your opponent could flip into something even better. Or Wild Magic Surge. Again, 2 mana instant destroy target permanent. That's great rate for removal. But its controller reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a permanent card that shares a type with that permanent. They can put that onto the battlefield. So you better hope that the next card down is a little bit worse than the thing that you just destroyed. Or Tybalt's Trickery. 1 and a red for an instant, counter target spell. It's just a counter spell in red. That's amazing. But then you choose 1, 2, or 3 at random. Its controller mills that many cards, then exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card with a different name than that spell. They can cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then they put the exiled cards on the bottom of their library in a random order. I actually think these red spells are very good. They have great rates and they have removal in a color that doesn't always have, a solid counter spell. And so Tybalt's Trickery can answer things that other things in red can't. And you just have to hope that you don't get yourself into a worse situation with your randomness. But there's some fun in that also. Now, you don't always have to be playing red to play a little bit of randomness. How about Breach the Multiverse? 7 mana, each player mills 10 cards, and then you get to bring back a creature or planeswalker for each player. But there's some randomness, like what's going to hit in those 10? You know, is something exciting going to get milled? Or Apex Devastator, it has Cascade. There's some randomness to that too. Are you going to hit the really important thing that you need, or are you just going to hit a bunch of mana rocks and mana dorks? Apex Devastator is particularly exciting because it has Cascade, 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 Cascade. And being 10 mana, it's going to hit anything in your deck. Then finally, we have Psychic Battle. 3 blue for an enchantment. Whenever a player chooses one or more targets, each player reveals the top card of their library. The player who reveals the card with the highest mana value may change the target or targets. If 2 or more cards are tied for the highest, the target or targets remain unchanged. Changing targets this way doesn't trigger abilities or permanents named Psychic Battle. So basically, if anyone tries to target anything, you just flip over the top card and whoever has the highest gets to reselect wherever things go. It creates chaos. Look, an entire deck full of random effects can get tedious and annoying because all luck is not a fun game, but all skill isn't always exciting either. A little bit of both combined together make for the best games. And so I would embrace a little bit of randomness in your commander decks. And then finally, I want to talk about the reversal. Clutching victory from the jaws of defeat is a great story. And so put in cards that are going to create that fantastic experience. Your opponents can board wipe you, sending you back to the Stone Age, making so you can't win the game. But if you play a card like Thrilling Encore, put onto the battlefield and you control all creature cards and all graveyards that are put there from the battlefield, you have more than countered their board wipe. Or you play Blood for the Blood God. It's 8 black, red for an instant. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature that died this turn. Discard your hand, draw 8 cards, Blood for the Blood God deals 8 damage to each opponent, and then exile it. Suddenly the board wipe becomes this huge refill of cards, and your opponents that thought that they've stabilized realize that you're back into the game in force. Or maybe your opponent plays a huge spell. They're not board wiping you, they're cyclonic rifting you. Well, one of the most fun things to do is a card like Narset's Reversal. Copy target instant or sorcery spell, then return it to its owner's hand. You may choose new targets for the copy. You can have that spell back, but I'm going to cast it right now for free. Or Wild Ricochet. 2 red for an instant. You may choose new targets for a target instant or sorcery spell, then copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Or maybe your opponent is just trying to win the game. Well, how about a card like Everybody Lives? 1 and a white for an instant. All creatures gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Players gain hexproof until end of turn. Players can't lose life this turn, and players can't lose the game or win the game this turn. Suddenly your opponent's victory is just robbed from them as Everybody Lives. Or we have a card like Stunning Reversal. 3 and a black for an instant. The next time you lose the game this turn, instead, draw 7 cards and your life total becomes 1. Exile Stunning Reversal. You can imagine that your opponents are confident, they're answering everything, they're taking the next steps to win the game, and then suddenly you're dismantling them and getting a huge advantage yourself. These reversals, clutching victory from the jaws of defeat, it's just so fun. And in fact, that's the theme of all of these. Play what's fun, and I found these cards to be really great, and I think that you should give them a try. Hey, did you know that I'm a Magic the Gathering ambassador? And this episode is sponsored by Wizards of the Coast. Thank you, Wizards, so much. Wizards of the Coast has a bunch of Magic cons going on the entire year. Some of them are coming up really soon. But you don't have to go to a Magic con to enjoy playing Magic. Go to your local game store. Sign up for an event, bring your deck, play with your friends, play wherever you want to, and when you do, just have tons of fun. Thanks, Wizards, for sponsoring this video, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you all play some really fun games of Magic. Bye-bye.